My name is Nora Whitaker, and I'm 28 years old. 4 days ago, I returned my boyfriend's engagement ring without telling him. He only noticed it was gone about an hour ago, and now my phone is practically melting from calls, texts, accusations, and people telling me I destroyed something beautiful. Maybe I did. Or maybe I finally stopped pretending something was beautiful after I saw what he really thought of it. Let me back up. I had been with my boyfriend Daniel Reeves for 3 years. We were one of those couples people described as solid, predictable, almost boring in a comforting way. We had talked about marriage more than once, not in vague, dreamy sentences, but in real conversations about timelines, rent, savings, families, kids someday, and what kind of life we wanted to build. I thought we were on the same page. I thought when he looked at me, he saw a future. 2 months ago, I started ring shopping. Here was my reality. I make $58,000 a year working in logistics. I am not broke, but I am not living some luxury life either. I have student loans, a car payment, rent, groceries, insurance, and I still try to contribute to retirement because I refuse to build a marriage on panic and debt. I ran my budget so many times the numbers started appearing in my sleep. Finally, I decided I could responsibly spend around $2,800 without draining my emergency fund or putting anything on a credit card I couldn't pay off. I went to 3 different jewelers. I learned about the 4 C's. I compared cuts, settings, warranties, return policies. I stood under those bright glass case lights feeling nervous and hopeful and slightly ridiculous, because every ring looked tiny until the salesperson placed it on velvet and started talking about meaning. Eventually, I found one I genuinely loved. A 0.5 carat diamond, excellent cut, set in white gold with delicate accent stones. It wasn't huge, but it was elegant. It looked like something chosen with care, not something bought to impress strangers. Last Saturday, I proposed. We were at our favorite restaurant, the one where we had our first date. I had barely eaten because my stomach was folding in on itself from nerves. When dessert came, I stood up, walked around the table, and got down on one knee. Daniel's eyes went wide. His hand covered his mouth. I told him he was my home, my best friend, the person I wanted beside me through every ordinary Tuesday and every impossible storm. Then I opened the box. He cried. He said yes. The restaurant clapped. Someone at the next table shouted congratulations. For a few minutes I thought I had stepped into the happiest memory of my life, while it was still being made. Daniel kept looking at the ring. He kept turning his hand under the light and smiling. He called his mother from the car. He texted his sister. He posted a photo of us at the table with the caption, "She asked." I said yes. I remember driving home with one hand on the wheel and the other shaking from adrenaline. Back at my apartment, he was still glowing. He sat on my couch, texting people, answering calls, laughing in that breathless way people do when happiness is too big for their chest. Around 11 p.m., he said he was going to take a shower. His phone was on the coffee table face up. I wasn't snooping. I was just sitting there, barefoot, exhausted, still floating. Then the screen lit up. It was a group chat notification. His friend Marcus had written, "Oh my God, show us the ring." Then Daniel's response appeared right below it, fully visible in the preview. "She proposed with a 0.5 carat ring, how embarrassing." I said yes, but we're definitely upgrading this, lol. I stared at that message until the room seemed to tilt. 3 years. 2 months of saving, hours of research. The most vulnerable moment I had ever offered another person. And 20 minutes after saying yes, his first instinct was to mock it to his friends. Not gently, not privately confused, not, "I love her, but I feel weird about the size." Just embarrassing. With a laughing emoji. When he came out of the shower, I said nothing. I don't know if that makes me cold or just stunned. He kissed my cheek. I smiled because my body remembered how, even though something inside me had gone completely still, We watched half a movie. He fell asleep, with the ring on his finger. The same ring he had just turned into a punchline for 5 of his closest friends. Sunday morning, I told him I had errands to run. He was still sleeping, one arm over his face, the ring catching a strip of sunlight from the blinds. I drove back to the jewelry store. The return policy was 30 days, full refund. The salesperson recognized me and smiled at first. Then her expression changed when I said I needed to return it. She didn't pry. She just processed the return. $2,847.62 went back onto my card. I walked out carrying an empty feeling heavier than the ring box had ever been. When I got home, Daniel was making breakfast. The ring was still on his finger. He lifted his hand and smiled. "I keep looking at it," he said. "I can't believe we're engaged." I looked at him, at the ring, at the mouth that had called it embarrassing, and I smiled back. I said nothing. The next 3 days felt like watching someone act in a play where I was the only person who had read the ending. He wore the ring to work. He took pictures of it, though never a close-up. On Instagram, he posted one angled shot of his hand resting on a coffee cup with the caption, "Still can't believe it." The diamond was barely visible. I noticed that. I hated that I noticed that. At night, he took it off and placed it in a little dish on my nightstand so it wouldn't get damaged while he slept. Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. Each morning, he put it back on like nothing had cracked between us. Thursday morning, he was running late and rushed out without putting it on. He texted me from work. "Babe, I forgot my ring at your place. Can you put it somewhere safe?" I replied, "Sure." That was yesterday. This morning, he asked me to bring it to lunch because his coworkers wanted to see it. I wrote back, "I can't find it." He called immediately. "What do you mean you can't find it?" "I mean it's not there." He came home on his lunch break and tore through my apartment, the nightstand, the bathroom, the kitchen counter, the couch cushions. His face got redder with every drawer he opened. I sat on the couch and watched him search for a ring that no longer existed in this apartment. A ring he had only wanted once other people were watching. Finally, he turned to me. "Where is it, Nora?" I looked straight at him. I returned it. His mouth opened. "You what?" "I returned it Sunday morning. Got a full refund." He stared at me like I had slapped him. "Why would you do that?" "Because I saw your text." "What text?" "Saturday night. Your group chat. She proposed with a 0.5 carat ring. How embarrassing. We're definitely upgrading this." The laughing emoji was a nice touch. The color drained from his face so fast, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He tried to speak, but nothing came out at first. Then he said, I was just joking with my friends. Joking about how embarrassing the ring I saved months for was." "Cool." Joke received. Ring returned. "We're done." His eyes filled with tears. "We're done? You're breaking up with me? Over a text?" "I'm breaking up with you because you mocked the most meaningful thing I have ever given anyone. You did it while I was in the next room, while I was probably still smiling like an idiot. You didn't hesitate." He started crying then. He said he didn't mean it. He said his friends made him insecure, that all the guys in the chat were joking about ring sizes and upgrades, that he loved me, that he was just being stupid. But all I could hear was that sentence again. How embarrassing. "You said yes with tears in your eyes," I told him. "Then 20 minutes later you laughed at me behind my back. That isn't insecurity, Daniel. That's contempt." Since then, his mother has called twice. His best friend sent me a paragraph saying, "I'm cruel, impulsive, and clearly not ready for marriage." Daniel has sent apology texts, angry texts, desperate texts, and one voice message where he sobbed so hard I deleted it halfway through. The money is back in my account. The ring is gone, and apparently, so is my engagement. Right now, I'm sitting in my quiet apartment, staring at the little empty dish on my nightstand, trying to understand how 3 years can end because one phone screen lit up at exactly the wrong time. Or maybe exactly the right one. 3 days passed after everything fell apart, and instead of the situation calming down, it became even messier. My phone never seemed to stop vibrating. Daniel alternated between apologizing, blaming me, promising to change, and asking for just one conversation. I didn't answer any of it. People kept telling me I should have confronted him before returning the ring. Maybe they're right. Maybe a conversation would have changed everything. But from where I was standing, he had already been given 3 full days to tell me the truth. 3 mornings putting that ring back on his finger. 3 evenings taking it off before bed. 3 opportunities to admit he had humiliated me behind my back. He never did. Friday evening, around 7 o'clock, someone knocked on my apartment door. I opened it to find Daniel's mother standing there with her purse tucked tightly beneath one arm and disappointment already written across her face. "We need to talk about what you've done to my son." I almost laughed. "What I've done?" "You proposed to him, let him tell everyone he was engaged, and then took the ring back like it meant nothing. He's devastated. He's humiliated." I folded my arms. "Did he tell you why I returned it?" "He said you suddenly changed your mind." "Did he mention the group chat?" Her expression shifted ever so slightly. "He said you misunderstood a private conversation." I pulled out my phone, opened the screenshot I had quietly taken that Saturday night, and handed it to her. She read it silently. "He proposed with a 0.5 carat ring." How embarrassing. Definitely upgrading this. For several seconds, she said nothing. Finally, she sighed. "He was joking with his friends." "Really?" "Men tease each other. There's pressure. Everyone compares rings nowadays. So, mocking your fiancée 20 minutes after accepting her proposal is normal? You don't understand how men communicate." "No," I answered calmly. "I understand respect." She looked uncomfortable but quickly recovered. "If you truly loved him, you'd forgive one stupid mistake. If he truly respected me, that message never would have been sent." She tried another tactic. "You should buy him another ring. A more appropriate one. Start over." That sentence settled something inside me. She still believed the problem was the size of the diamond, not the betrayal, not the mockery, not the deception. I walked to the door and opened it. "I'm not buying another ring." She stared at me for another moment before shaking her head. "I thought you were more mature than this, and I thought your son respected me." She left without another word. Saturday afternoon brought something I never expected. An Instagram message arrived from someone named Chloe. She had been in Daniel's group chat. We'd only met 4 or 5 times over the years. Her message began simply, "I know this is weird, but I think you deserve to know the truth." I hesitated before replying. "What truth?" Her answer came almost immediately. "The ring wasn't the first time." My stomach tightened. "For months, Daniel has been making comments about you in our group." I stared at the screen. "What kind of comments?" She sent several screenshots. None of them included the proposal. They were older. Months older. One message after another. "Nora works so hard and still drives that old Honda. She's sweet, but I honestly expected she'd be making more money by now. Hopefully she'll level up eventually. Sometimes I feel like I'm settling." Each sentence hit harder than the last. Not because strangers were reading them, because they were written by the man who had kissed me goodbye every morning. The man who had thanked me for cooking dinner. The man who had told me he loved, how responsible I was. I kept scrolling. Vacation jokes, comments about my apartment, remarks about my clothes, little digs disguised as humor. Every insecurity I had ever confessed to him had somehow become entertainment. I finally typed, "Why are you telling me this?" Her reply took almost a minute. "Because what he did was wrong. The others are defending him because they're his friends. I couldn't. I actually left the group after the ring situation. You deserved better." I set my phone down. For a long time, I simply sat in silence. The proposal hadn't ended my relationship. The screenshots had. The ring wasn't the problem. It was only the first crack that allowed me to see the foundation underneath. Sunday afternoon, Daniel came over to collect his things. We hadn't lived together, so there wasn't much. A few shirts, running shoes, his toothbrush, some books, a phone charger. I had already packed everything neatly into 2 boxes. When I opened the door, he looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. Hair uncombed. He stepped inside quietly. So, I nodded toward the boxes. Everything's there. He looked around my apartment, as if expecting something different. This is really happening. Yes. You won't even think about counseling? I shook my head. No. His shoulders slumped. You're ending 3 years over one stupid text. I met his eyes. No. I'm ending 3 years because I finally learned what you sound like when you think I'm not listening. He looked away. I was insecure. You were cruel. I never meant those things. You repeated them for months. His head snapped back toward me. What? One of your friends contacted me. His entire expression froze. What? What did she tell you? Enough. Silence. Real silence. The kind that makes every ticking clock sound louder. Finally, he whispered, Chloe. I didn't answer. He already knew. He sat down slowly on the edge of my couch. I never thought she'd... Tell me the truth? He buried his face in his hands. I was trying to fit in. You were trying to impress people who laughed every time you insulted the woman you planned to marry. They joked about everyone's relationships. So you volunteered mine. Tears began sliding down his face. I love you. I believed he thought he did. But love without respect eventually becomes performance. You loved having me, I said quietly. That's different. He stood. I'll apologize. You already have. I'll apologize publicly. Too late. I'll leave every group. Still too late. I'll do anything. I looked at the empty space on my bookshelf where his books had been. You already did everything. He stared at me for several seconds. Then, almost in a whisper, please don't erase 3 years. I picked up one of the boxes and placed it gently into his hands. I didn't erase them. You rewrote them. He stood motionless. For the first time since I'd met him, he had absolutely nothing to say. He carried both boxes to his car without looking back. I watched through the window until he drove away. My apartment suddenly felt larger, quieter, lonelier, but strangely, lighter. I didn't know it yet, but the truth about Daniel was only beginning to spread beyond our relationship. Within days, the very people who had laughed with him inside that group chat would begin turning on one another, and the screenshots that destroyed my engagement would soon destroy far more than his reputation. About a week later, everything finally settled. I ignored Daniel's remaining messages, and eventually they stopped. What surprised me wasn't that our relationship ended. It was how quickly the truth spread. The screenshots from the group chat were shared among mutual friends, and suddenly the story Daniel had been telling no longer matched the evidence. Some people still defended him, but others quietly apologized to me for believing his version. The biggest surprise came from his younger sister. She called and admitted she had known about his jokes for months. I kept hoping he'd grow out of it, she said. I'm sorry I stayed quiet. Hearing someone from his own family acknowledge the pattern lifted a weight I didn't realize I was carrying. For the first time, I stopped wondering whether I had overreacted. A few days later, I returned to the same jewelry store to replace the battery in my watch. The salesperson recognized me immediately. She smiled awkwardly before saying, Your ex came in with his mother asking if he could still claim the ring. I couldn't help laughing. The ring he had called embarrassing had suddenly become valuable once it was gone. The store refused. Of course. The refund had already been processed, and there was nothing left to claim. His final email arrived that night. It wasn't really an apology. He said he was sorry for how everything was perceived, and insisted I had overreacted to a private conversation. He still wanted us to meet halfway. I deleted the email without replying. There was no halfway between respect and disrespect. Looking back, I realized the diamond was never the issue. If Daniel had honestly told me he felt insecure or wanted to talk, we could have faced that together. Instead, he smiled at me, laughed behind my back, and expected me never to know. Losing the engagement hurt, but losing someone who never truly respected me would have hurt much more if I'd married him. The refund is still sitting in my savings account. Someday I'll buy another ring. For someone who understands that love isn't measured in carats, it's measured in character. Until then, I'm at peace. What I returned wasn't just a ring. I returned a future built on disrespect, and that's one purchase I'll never regret.